nature's call. Whispers from the eternal void.
At 3:33 local, the Basilica bells tolled 3 times in perfect synchronization across 7 different temporal frequencies, past, present, and 5 potential futures simultaneously detected by chronometer arrays. I state this impossible fact first because everything that follows depends upon accepting that time itself has become weaponized on this emperor-forsaken agri-world. I am Interrogator Maravel Ordo Xenos, bearing discretionary authority under Seal C/IX-77. The Basilica of St. Corvian rises from Silo 13 like a Gothic spine carved from Vault Prime's grain tithes, its hexagonal stained glass windows clicking against lead joints as they shift between artistic periods. High Gothic majesty dissolving into primitive imperial iconography, then forward into architectural styles that won't exist for centuries. The braided bell ropes hang severed and frost-rimed, yet my auspex screams 92% humidity. Ice crystals form on votive candles that burn backward, flames withdrawing into wicks like confessions taken back. The contradiction gnaws. My breath mists while sweat beads on my collar, brass fixtures, weep in condensation that freezes before it falls. My team moves with practiced silence. Sister Sergeant Isolde of the Adepta Sororitas takes point, her power armor inscribed with temporal wards that pulse with uneasy light, flamer grumbling its steady catechism. 5 Vostroyan firstborn under Sergeant Kazik fan into textbook formation, their laser guns modified with Kronos stabilizers, humming against temporal interference. Margos Kronos, Hest Row, 77 moves like a metronome's tick, his augmetic chronometers clicking in arrhythmic patterns, mechadendrites tasting air for temporal data while Benharik whispers spill from his Vox grill. Astropath Tertius Vaughan clutches his head, third eye weeping luminous chronological displacement fluid that smells of winter apples. We have 6 hours before the incoming warp storm cuts Vox with sector command. 17 pilgrims have vanished during specific prayer cycles. Witnesses describing them aging decades with each circuit until they fade from perception entirely. The local ecclesiarchy reports devotional schedules disrupted by temporal loops, the faithful walking the same corridors repeatedly across multiple time streams. Time binds, flesh fails, faith endures, Sister Isolde recites as we cross the threshold. The traditional litany echoes strangely, creating harmonic resonance with sounds from when that aren't now. The phrase steadies the air, a cadence and a bludgeon against whatever has learned to eat time itself. Inside, engineered silence presses like a held breath. No birds nesting in rafters, no mice in grain stores, no cough from pilgrims, only the aftersound of bells that aren't finished, ringing in all the times they have ever rung. Curls of incense hang like glass, showing my reflection from 3 angles, each a fraction of a second out of step. The hexagonal windows darken as we pass, not from clouds but from temporal shadows, the absence of light from times when these windows didn't exist, overlapping with moments when they will be destroyed. St. Corvian's effigy looms over the altar. Retouched so many times, his gaze has become a palimpsest of piety and paint. The nave stretches into shadows that move independently of their light sources. Air carrying the scent of incense that hasn't been burned yet mixed with chronological displacement's metallic tang. Hest's optical lenses were, focusing on temporal flux readings that spike beyond standard parameters. Interrogator, his Vox crackles, detecting Chronos variants at 7 distinct frequencies. Temporal substrate exhibits organized manipulation patterns. His chronometer arrays chatter in agitated Binharic, receiving packet headers from 225 years prior. We advance toward the reliquary of Saint Corvian, a crystalline shrine containing the preserved heart of the world's patron saint. The organ pulses with steady rhythm that predates its installation by 3 centuries, as if it began beating before it was placed. Before the saint died, before the basilica was built. Each beat strikes my sternum from inside, finding the notch beneath my throat and setting its hook. Vaughan staggers, third eye streaming. "The warp here tastes of when," he whispers, his voice carrying harmonics that arrive moments before he speaks. Something has learned the measure of prayer, and it grows hungry for more. The shrine's crystal housing reflects our approach from multiple temporal angles, showing us as we are, as we were moments ago, and as we will be in the next few seconds. Temperature drops as we advance, my breath beginning to mist, while humidity readings climb impossibly higher. "Formation," I order. Vestroyans sweep pew shadows with practiced precision, their chrono-stabilized weapons humming against the basilica's temporal contamination. Isolde's flamer pilot light spits a triple tongue, blue, green, and a color my language doesn't possess, before resolving into ordinary fire. I produce the steel and bone token, pressing it to the reliquary's seal. By the will of the holy ordos, contingency claustrum opens. The lock clicks. Metal exhales ancient salt and relic lacquer. The cage yawns. Within lies an ovoid artifact veined like leaf and bone, lacquered in century-thick layers of devotion. Something beats inside, not fat and biological, not fully mechanical. A measured thud that my auspex cannot properly capture, reading, sliding, and correcting as if the device suffers temporal seasickness. Duty is sequence and shield. I draw the sigil on my tongue with my knife's point, salt and copper and small sting, and begin the words that make locks forget their purpose. By seal of the Emperor's will, I bind that which exists outside ordained time. The reliquary answers me. A wet, anticipatory counterbeat strikes my sternum 3 seconds before each syllable leaves my mouth, as if the heart within times my speech, and has already learned how this prayer will end. I remember moving as a wedge formation. I am moving as a wedge formation. I will have moved as a wedge formation. The temporal contamination seeps through my chronometer's blessed circuits, creating memory echoes that arrive before the memories form. Sergeant Kazak's hand signals split into 3 layered gestures. Past command completing as present command begins, while future command anticipates targets that haven't materialized yet. Our movements leave ghostly after images, translucent repetitions of actions occurring seconds out of phase, like watching ourselves through fractured glass. The squad breaches the nave with practiced precision, but each step creates temporal displacement. I watch Guardsman Petrov raise his lasgun in triplicate, the echo of his past motion overlapping with present action, while his future positioning anticipates threats across multiple time streams. The effect transforms military discipline into a stroboscopic nightmare of scattered moments, each soldier existing as past, present, and future iterations simultaneously. Environmental horror manifests in crystalline impossibility. Incense hangs in rigid sheets that reflect light from different time periods, golden imperial radiance mixing with the cold blue illumination of pre-Unity Terra, while artificial starlight from humanity's far future cuts prismatic angles through suspended smoke. Each inhalation brings sense across centuries. Myrrh burned in M30 devotions, synthetic aromatics from the dark age of technology, and something floral that won't be cultivated for millennia. Flies hibernate and swarm simultaneously in temporal paradox. Clusters of insects hang motionless mid-flight, while identical swarms buzz frantically through the same coordinates, their life cycles compressed and expanded across multiple time streams. The dead and living occupy identical space, creating buzzing silence that sets my teeth on edge with its impossible percussion. Sister Isolde advances with measured steps, her flamer pilot light burning in 3 distinct colors, representing past, present, and future combustion states. Blue flame from spent promethium, orange from current ignition, and brilliant white suggesting future refinement of sacred fire. Her power armor's temporal wards pulse erratically, trying to maintain chronological coherence against the basilica's time-sick atmosphere. Magos Hest's Binharic pings return corrupted with data from the dark age of technology. His mechadendrites twitch as ancient packet headers flood noospheric channels, construction protocols for buildings that predate the Imperium, technical specifications for devices whose names are forbidden knowledge. Machine spirits receive signals across temporal barriers, their logic engines struggling to process information from humanity's lost golden age. Fascinating, Hestvox clicks, optical lenses cycling through spectral. Filters. Temporal substrate exhibits organized manipulation patterns. The local machine spirits report data bursts from 8 centuries prior, suggesting xenoform chronos adaptation across multiple chronological strata. Votive plaques rewrite themselves as we watch. Imperial prayers morphing into pre-imperial languages with fluid script changes. High Gothic dissolves into Terran Standard, then further into linguistic roots I recognize from Xenos translation protocols. One plaque's brass surface ripples like liquid. Av Imperator becomes Hail Sol Invictus, becomes pictographs. My augmetic translator refuses to process, finally settling on symbols that hurt to perceive, meaning existing in temporal dimensions my consciousness cannot access. The Vostroyans maintain formation discipline despite displacement effects. Their chrono-stabilized weapons hum with increasing urgency, attempting to maintain targeting solutions on threats existing across multiple time streams. Temperature gradients create impossible meteorological conditions. My breath mists while perspiration beads on my collar, brass fixtures weeping condensation that freezes before falling. We locate the true reliquary deeper in the nave's shadows. The artifact appears carved from chitin existing in multiple evolutionary states simultaneously. Primitive carapace segments morphing into complex bioarchitectural forms, then forward into something suggesting evolutionary development beyond current xenoform classification. The surface shifts between crude exoskeleton material and sophisticated organic engineering, implying millions of years of adaptive refinement. Astropath Vaughn staggers against a pew, his third eye streaming luminous displacement fluid that pools on ancient wood, aging the grain in accelerated rings. The warp taste of temporal hunger, he gasps. Something of us learning human time rhythm, adapting our chronological perception for alien purposes. The reliquary pulses with organic rhythm, defying its crystalline housing. Each beat sends vibrations through the basilica's stone foundation, creating harmonic resonance with severed bell ropes overhead. The frequency matches human cardiac rhythm, but with subtle variations, suggesting alien interpretation of biological timekeeping. I approach with the standard containment protocols, hand moving toward the blessed seal breaker on my belt. The reliquary's pulse quickens as I advance, its rhythm shifting to match my elevated heart rate. But synchronization carries disturbing temporal offset. It beats 3 times ahead of my cardiac cycle, learning my future rhythm before my heart decides to beat. The realization strikes with cold precision. This thing anticipates my biological functions, reading cardiovascular patterns across multiple time streams and adapting its rhythm to match heartbeats I haven't yet produced. The temporal contamination runs deeper than environmental effects. Something learns to predict human physiology across chronological barriers, studying our biological timekeeping to manipulate temporal perception. My chronometer stutters, displaying impossible dates cycling through past missions and future briefings. The reliquary's wet, anticipatory thrum beats 3 seconds ahead of my heart. A pressure in my chest, cold, rhythmic premonition preceding actual blood pump. It matches my heartbeat perfectly, but always 3 beats ahead, as if reading my future cardiac rhythm before my body decides to create it. The thing teaches my flesh its schedule, anticipating my cadence and making me fit its temporal choreography before I can resist. The reliquary's anticipatory pulse drives us deeper into Silo 13's foundations, where devotion and containment protocols have merged into something neither purely sacred nor safely secular. I lead the descent through sacristy access tunnels carved from compressed grain foundations, their walls marked with overlapping hazard designations spanning centuries of imperial bureaucracy. Ancient Mechanicus chevrons in faded crimson worn of temporal contamination risks, their geometric precision overlaid by ecclesiarchy devotional scrollwork that transforms technical warnings into illuminated prayer script. The tunnel curves downward in a spiral following the silo's structural requirements, while accommodating the basilica's sacred geometry. Temperature drops with each step, but humidity readings climb impossibly higher, creating atmospheric contradictions that make my skin crawl with temporal displacement. Sister Isolde maintains rear guard, her flamer's pilot light now burning in 3 distinct phases, past blue, present orange, future white, while muttering the litany that anchors us. Time binds, flesh fails, faith endures. Margos Hest's optical arrays focus on corroded data plates embedded in tunnel walls, his mechadendrites extending to interface with access ports sealed for 2 centuries. Binharik Kant spills from his Vox grill as he decodes quarantine protocols written in archaic Mechanicus notation, his chronometers ticking in arrhythmic patterns that match the impossible bells above. Quarantine order, interrogator, Hestvox clicks, projecting decoded text onto the tunnel wall. Xenoform ovum, temporal contamination risk, chronostasis maintained. Fabricator general authorization required for breach, dated 2 centuries prior, predicate red seal. The technical exposition unfolds through his analysis as we descend. The original containment facility predates the basilica by 8 decades, constructed during Volt Prime's initial colonization when Mechanicus survey teams discovered anomalous xenoform remains in Silo 13's foundation. Temporal contamination protocols required specialized chronostasis chambers to prevent chronological leakage from affecting surrounding agricultural infrastructure. Environmental horror manifests in impossible precipitation patterns. Water droplets from tunnel condensation fall at different temporal rates. Some hover in crystalline suspension, refusing gravity and time alike. Others accelerate through gravitational fields that exist across multiple time streams, creating percussion that matches the reliquary's rhythm. Each droplet strikes stone surfaces in synchronized intervals, echoing the heartbeat pattern from above, transforming random drip into temporal metronome. We discover devotional frescoes, layered over Mechanicus chronometer arrays. Sister Isolde's armored fingers tracing paint, covering delicate temporal measurement devices. The ecclesiarchy claimed this chamber during the Third Reclamation, she observes. Professional disapproval edging her voice. They transformed technical containment into sacred space without understanding underlying mechanisms. The realization strikes with cold precision. In their zeal, the priests layered holiness like plaster, sealing blessed ignorance into every surface. Angels and saints painted over brass chronometer arrays. Devotional scumble-filled seams between machine housings. Reliquary tassels hung where vent vanes once spun. The act transformed ward into altar, and altar into lure, unknowingly disrupting temporal containment protocols that had maintained chronostasis for decades. The stairwell ends at a hexagonal landing crushed by pressure from 6 directions. At its heart sits a sealed plate of adamant and brass bearing both Ordo Chronos sigils and cog-toothed cult Mechanicus skulls, over which the ecclesiarchy has smeared gold wash and hand-painted halos. Pilgrim offerings crowd its lip, guttered candles, grain sheaves bound with ribbon, coins whose dates crawl under my gaze. Hest extends mechadendrites to taste the plate with Auspex tongues. Kronos lock, stasis compartment below. He signals the Vostroyans forward. Plasma cutters emerge, their casings etched with warnings about temporal eddies and flesh safety. Blue suns bloom as the cutters bite. The plasma beams age and renew themselves with each pass. Nozzles, pitting, warping, then smoothing to factory fresh sheen as time inside the jets hiccups. Heat rolls over our visors, then withdraws, as if second thoughts could reverse thermodynamics. Sparks fall and unfall, some skittering forward to die, others retreating into their origin to be unborn. The plate sings with stressed metal and submerged machine spirit lament, harmonizing with triadic drip and premonitory thud that precedes heartbeat. The seal parts along seams that hadn't existed until they remembered themselves. Cold vapor rolls out, then withdraws, tugging at hair and soul like tide. The chamber beyond exhales air carrying impossible scents. Grain from harvests that haven't happened yet. Green sweetness edged with machine oil, and faint spice of summer storms still unborn. My stomach clenches with memory I haven't made. Light inside wavers thin and undecided, as though lumen strips negotiate which century to obey. We advance into geometry that shifts from circle to oval to something with sides I cannot count. At the center lies a shell, massive enough that the chamber was built around it like a reliquary. Its surface exhibits temporal fracture lines webbing like lightning trapped in amber. Some cracks gleaming fresh with edges wet from recent birth. Others ancient with margins eroded and colonized by dust older than the basilica itself. The shell material resembles chitin existing in multiple evolutionary states simultaneously. Primitive carapace segments morphing into complex bioarchitectural forms, suggesting millions of years of adaptive refinement. Fragments scattered around exist in different temporal states, appearing freshly broken while simultaneously showing centuries of decay. Then I see the marks that freeze analysis, tiny prayers carved into the shell's inner surface in a child's handwriting. The ink ages and renews in cycles, appearing fresh then fading to ancient brown, before returning to wet black in temporal loops. The script repeats our litany. Time binds, flesh fails, faith endures. Written in innocent hand that predates the basilica's construction, while somehow knowing exact phrasing that won't be standardized for centuries. The prayers are being written and rewritten across time by someone who may not yet exist. Desperate pleas echoing through chronological void, as if a small, stubborn hand keeps inscribing hope from a future that hasn't arrived. My chronometer stutters between contradictory readings as temporal disorientation deepens with each step deeper into the investigation. The cracked shell's interior reveals bioarchitecture that defies classification protocols. Tyranid carapace segments fuse seamlessly with chronometer components in a grotesque hybrid of flesh and time-keeping machinery. Chitinous ridges support delicate temporal measurement arrays, while pulsing vessels carry chronological data instead of blood, creating what Margos Hest observes with barely contained awe as heretical brilliance. The fusion appears deliberate, evolutionary adaptation across multiple time streams, where xenoform biology learned to manipulate temporal flow through mechanical precision. Organic conduits weave through brass chronometer housings, their surfaces glistening with temporal lubricant that allows matter to exist across multiple time states simultaneously. Each component pulses with alien rhythm, teaching metal to beat like flesh, while flesh learns to tick like clockwork. I extend my auspex toward spore dust scattered throughout the chamber, readings immediately contradicting fundamental chronological laws. Some particles register millennia old, their carbon dating suggesting origins, predating human colonization of this sector. Molecular decay curves exhausted into ash-gray certainty. Others haven't technically been created yet. Existing in temporal states, my equipment lacks protocols to measure. Their atomic structures exhibiting pre-formation signatures that make my augmetic logic centers ache with impossibility. Spore dust analysis confirms temporal paradox in particulate form. I report, watching grains strobe under spectral analysis. Matter existing before its creation, while simultaneously aging beyond theoretical decay point. The sample tray vibrates with rhythm I feel in my teeth rather than hands. Dust humming across centuries in triadic harmony that matches the basilica's corrupted bells above. Environmental escalation manifests throughout the chamber, as temporal contamination spreads upward into the basilica proper. Wooden pews develop grain patterns spiraling through their growth rings in temporal loops, tree time folding back on itself in impossible botanical paradox. Annual rings appear, disappear, then reappear in different configurations, as wood remembers multiple histories of growth and harvest across various timeline branches. A single knot shows the tree as seedling, mature trunk, and fossilized remnant simultaneously. Sister Isolde reports devotional icons weeping fluid that flows upward and downward simultaneously, gravitational streams defying physics while maintaining perfect symmetry. The liquid appears to be temporal displacement residue, chronological lubricant allowing matter to slip between time states without catastrophic molecular stress. Her flamer pilot light now burns in 7 distinct phases, each representing different temporal frequencies detected by the chamber's resonance field. Body horror discovery emerges near the chamber's periphery, where Guardsman Petrov locates a missing pilgrim's coat, standing upright against the wall, maintaining human posture without occupying flesh. The garment contains temporal displacement residue, crystalline deposits suggesting the wearer existed in multiple time streams until chronological stress tore them apart across dimensional barriers. Fabric fibers exhibit the same age variance as spore dust, some threads ancient beyond measurement, others existing in temporal states predating their manufacture. The coat's positioning suggests the pilgrim was attempting to flee when temporal displacement reached critical threshold. Buttons show stress fractures from existing across multiple time streams simultaneously, while pocket contents include coins dated centuries apart and prayer scrolls written in languages that won't exist for millennia. The person became temporally distributed until their consciousness could no longer maintain coherent existence across chronological barriers, leaving only displacement residue, an empty cloth animated by temporal echoes. Astropath Vaughn staggers against the chamber wall, third eye bleeding luminous chronological displacement, fluid in increasing volume. His psychic perception overwhelmed by temporal pressure, he collapses to his knees, hands scrabbling at stone as he begins drawing hexagonal patterns with his own ichor. The geometric configurations shift between past and future states as his finger traces designs across ancient surfaces. Navigation charts for temporal space, coordinates allowing movement between chronological layers. The warp screams with temporal hunger, Vaughn gasps, his voice carrying harmonics, arriving moments before his lips move. Something vast learning the rhythm of human time, adapting our chronological perception for xenoform purposes across infinite timeline branches. Sound horror manifests as the basilica's acoustics begin reflecting audio from different centuries simultaneously. Prayers from the building's consecration echo alongside construction noise from its foundation, while sounds from its eventual destruction create impossible temporal symphony. The hexagonal stained glass windows darken as temporal shadows pass behind them. Silhouettes of events occurring across multiple time streams, casting darkness from moments existing in parallel chronological dimensions. The chamber's atmosphere grows thick with temporal displacement, each breath carrying air from different chronological periods. I taste pre-imperial oxygen mixed with post-human atmospheric compositions, while temperature fluctuations create impossible meteorological conditions spanning multiple climate epochs. Environmental pressure increases as temporal mass accumulates within the chamber's resonance field. The shell's biomechanical components pulsing in synchronization with the basilica's severed bell ropes above. The stained glass windows begin tessellating into chitin-like patterns, their lead joints flowing like organic tissue while maintaining crystalline transparency. Each facet reflects light from different temporal periods, creating prismatic effects that hurt to perceive directly. But within the geometric transformations, identical scenes repeat across infinite variations. Something massive hatching from temporal chrysalis, breaking free from chronological constraints that once contained its development. The same moment plays across countless timeline branches. Emergence, birth, awakening occurring over and over in slightly different temporal configurations. Each facet shows the scene at different chronological moments: past preparation, present emergence, future consequences, while maintaining perfect synchronization across all time streams. The hatching happens always, never, and eternally, a birth transcending temporal limitation by occurring in every possible, when simultaneously, the glass singing with harmonics spanning centuries as something vast learns to exist beyond the constraints of linear time. Physical law breakdown escalates beyond environmental contamination as the basilica's atmosphere abandons gravitational principles for temporal mechanics. Smoke and incense cease normal convection, flowing toward the reliquary in impossible spirals where past, present, and future air currents converge on a single chronological singularity. Aromatic streams from centuries of devotion braid inward through atmospheric mechanics that defy physics, creating olfactory time-lapse spanning the basilica's entire consecrated history. Temperature gradients transform into chronological phenomena. Brass fixtures accumulate frost from future ice ages, while air currents carry solar heat from stellar expansion, millions of years hence, creating atmospheric stratification where each breath contains thermal energy from different cosmic epochs. My skin experiences simultaneous burning and freezing as molecular motion exists across multiple temporal states, heat and cold occupying identical coordinates through chronological displacement. Squad split, I order, military precision cutting through sensory horror. Sister Isolde, take Kazakh's fire team to the bell tower. Assess temporal contamination in Campanile structure. Magos Hest, with me to the crypt. We need chronometer array analysis from ossuary chambers. Sister Isolde acknowledges with practiced efficiency. Her power armor's temporal wards pulsing in 7-phase cycles, matching the basilica's chronological resonance. The Vostroyans follow with disciplined movement, their chrono-stabilized weapons humming against increasing temporal interference. Each footstep creates acoustic shadows across multiple time streams. Sound arriving before impact, echoing after silence, creating impossible percussion that transforms military advance into temporal symphony. We descend through sacristy passages where devotional frescoes overlay ancient Mechanicus chronometer arrays. The crypt reveals architecture designed for dual purpose. Sacred ossuary built around sophisticated temporal measurement systems. Skulls positioned in hexagonal patterns around a central shaft create resonance chambers where acoustic properties amplify chronological precision. Each skull's empty sockets contain delicate temporal sensors, eye bones replaced with chronometer components that tick in harmony with accumulated death rhythms. The central shaft breathes with regular rhythm, matching the reliquary's pulse, exhaling temporal displacement vapor, while inhaling chronological data from surrounding bone chambers. Airflows carry atmospheric samples from different time periods. Pre-imperial oxygen, mixing with post-human compositions, an impossible meteorological phenomenon. Through Vox communication, Sister Isolde reports bell tower discoveries confirming xenoform temporal adaptation. Interrogator, the bells are fused with biochronometer components. Bronze infected with temporal chitin exhibiting cyclical aging and renewal patterns. The metal lives, dies, and resurrects across multiple time streams while maintaining acoustic resonance properties. Her description details grotesque hybrid architecture. Tyranid biomechanical evolution, adapting human devotional infrastructure for temporal manipulation. Bell bronze, infected with alien temporal tissue, creates instruments capable of ringing across multiple chronological frequencies simultaneously, teaching metal to pulse. With organic rhythm, while flesh learns percussive precision. Hest's mechadendrites interface with crypt chronometer arrays, ancient Mechanicus protocols activating bone-housed temporal sensors. Detecting Chronos variance acceleration, interrogator. The ossuary functions as temporal resonance amplifier, using accumulated death data to fuel chronological manipulation. Each skull's final heartbeat archived for temporal synchronization purposes. Environmental pressure increases as temporal gravitational effects manifest throughout the crypt. Dust particles orbit invisible chronological masses, while atmospheric density fluctuates according to temporal rather than barometric pressure. Stone surfaces develop temporal stress fractures as matter struggles to exist across multiple time streams. Masonry aging millennia while renewing to construction fresh condition in cyclical patterns. The shaft's breathing rhythm intensifies, architectural pressure building toward critical threshold. Through acoustic resonance chambers created by hexagonal skull arrangements, the reliquary's pulse reaches crescendo intensity. Accumulated heartbeats of centuries of pilgrimage focus through bone chronometer arrays, amplifying temporal rhythm until stone itself begins pulsing with organic cadence. Above us, gravitational temporal anchoring reaches critical mass. Environmental convergence creates visible distortion as smoke, light, and breath bend inward toward chronological singularity. The reliquary splits along temporal fracture lines with sound like breaking crystal across multiple time streams. Chronological pressure releasing in waves that make reality itself shudder. The revelation emerges through temporal unfolding, a glistening chronos synapse organ pulsing with biomechanical precision. Its surfaces reflect light from different chronological periods while maintaining coherent form across multiple time streams. Chitinous ridges support delicate temporal measurement arrays, while pulsing vessels carry chronological data instead of blood, creating hybrid architecture where xenoform biology learned to manipulate temporal flow through mechanical precision. Each pulse carries impossible rhythm, not singular heartbeat, but accumulated cardiac patterns spanning past, present, and future. The chronos synapse pulses with the collected heartbeats of everyone who will ever die on this world. Past deaths, present dying, future termination, compressed into singular temporal rhythm that teaches reality itself to pulse with alien chronological precision. The organ has learned human time through accumulated death rhythm, adapting biological temporal perception for xenoform purposes, while teaching matter itself to exist according to alien chronological laws, rather than imperial physical constants. It beats with the cardiac symphony of an entire world's mortality, timing itself with our ends to make ending into beginning. The glistening chronos synapse pulses with accumulated mortality as Margos Hest's clinical analysis stutters through temporal displacement, his Binharic Kant fragmenting across multiple time streams. Tyranid chronos synapse, interrogator, Hevox clicks, optical lenses cycling through spectral filters. Biotemporal coordination organ designed for hive fleet synchronization across parallel chronological dimensions. But this specimen exhibits unprecedented adaptive evolution patterns. His mechadendrites extend toward the alien organ, readings corrupted by chronos interference. Standard xenoform protocol coordinates arrival across multiple timelines simultaneously. This chronos synapse was designed to harmonize hive fleet vectors through divergent chronology, ensuring consumption occurs at optimal temporal confluence across dimensional barriers. The organ's chitinous surfaces support delicate temporal measurement arrays, while pulsing vessels carry chronological data instead of synaptic fluid. Biomechanical precision defies standard classification protocols. Alien biology learning to manipulate time itself through mechanical accuracy, teaching flesh to tick with clockwork rhythm, while metal learns to pulse with organic cadence. Then why abandoned here? I force through temporal displacement, affecting my speech patterns, words arriving before thoughts complete their formation. Hess's reply fragments across time streams. Its fleet moved through different temporal dimensions to avoid imperial interdiction. This specimen remained anchored in baseline reality, coordination signals reaching across dimensional barriers to find only silence. Standard protocol demands self-termination upon fleet separation. The revelation crystallizes with horrible clarity. It didn't die, it adapted. When Hive Fleet Chronos shifted into parallel time dimensions, this Chronos synapse learned survival through available temporal infrastructure. The Basilica's bells provided acoustic anchors, while centuries of prayer created rhythmic patterns the alien organ absorbed through resonance frequency analysis. The too late becomes clear, I realize, watching temporal displacement patterns flow through the chronosynapse's biomechanical architecture. It hatched across all time simultaneously when abandoned, but only now has learned to focus temporal manipulation into singular reality stream, instead of dimensional coordination protocols. Environmental horror manifests as faces emerge from stone walls, not carved devotional imagery, but temporal echoes of people absorbed into the expanding chronos field. Each visage exists in multiple time states simultaneously: past youth, present aging, future death compressed into singular temporal expression. They represent everyone who will enter the basilica's chronological influence, their temporal signatures archived for eventual consumption. The religious horror compounds as St. Corvian's reliquary reveals its true nature. The crystalline shrine was never holy. It served as the Chronos synapse's chrysalis, providing protective housing while the alien organ absorbed centuries of prayer, rhythm. Each devotion fed its temporal education, liturgical cadence teaching human chronological perception, while votive offerings provided organic matter for biomechanical evolution. The saint's heart was consumed during initial adaptation, Hest observes, analyzing residual organic matter within the chrysalis chamber. Chronos synapse used human cardiac rhythm as template for temporal manipulation, learning to pulse with accumulated death patterns spanning past, present, and future mortality cycles. Temperature sluices between epochs as environmental pressure builds toward critical threshold. The basilica's acoustic properties amplify temporal displacement, while prayer frequencies bleed across chronological barriers. My breath mists with future ice ages, while air carries solar heat from stellar expansion millions of years hence. Atmospheric stratification, where each inhalation contains thermal energy from different cosmic periods. Stakes escalate beyond containment protocols as Hess's analysis reveals catastrophic implications. If it completes temporal synchronization, localized chronos singularity formation becomes inevitable. All of Volt Prime's timeline pulled into singular moment of eternal consumption. Past colonization, present agriculture, future development compressed into temporal feeding cycle. The entire world's history would collapse into one unending instant, where the alien organ absorbs chronological energy from every moment simultaneously. Not destruction, but temporal erasure. Existence reduced to perpetual consumption across infinite wind streams. Astropath Vaughn collapses as his consciousness stretches across multiple time streams, psychic perception overwhelmed by temporal pressure. His third eye streams a luminous chronological displacement fluid, while hands scrabble at stone, drawing hexagonal navigation patterns for temporal space. The warp itself recoils from Chronos' singularity formation as reality prepares temporal collapse. His scream emerges silently, internal agony resonating through the Chronos field as his mind fragments across infinite temporal echoes. Each fragment experiences every moment of his life simultaneously: birth, training, service, death. Chronological paradox shattering consciousness into temporal splinters that cannot reconcile their impossible coexistence. Atmospheric density fluctuates according to chronological rather than barometric pressure, while stone surfaces develop temporal stress fractures. Matter struggles to exist across multiple time streams as the chronosynapse's influence expands beyond architectural containment, teaching reality itself to pulse with alien temporal precision. The faces in the walls animate with synchronized precision, temporal echoes achieving perfect coordination through the alien organ's rhythmic manipulation.
previously vacant eyes focus with
terrible intent, turning toward me with inexorable certainty. Their lips move in impossible temporal harmony, each voice speaking fragments of my name from different points across my timeline. They speak in voices spanning past encounters and future meetings. Every person I have ever known, or will ever know, across all possible timeline branches. My infant cry, my drill sergeant's commands, my mother's lullabies, my own internal monologue, the crisp authority of future selves I haven't yet become, all converge into choir of my own identity. Mara Vel, they chorus in perfect temporal synchronization, past voices blending with present speech while future conversations arrive 3 seconds early. The Chronos synapse demonstrating mastery over human temporal perception by speaking through everyone I will ever encounter, across every possible when. Their harmony teaching my name to time itself. I speak. I spoke. I will have spoken the words that anchor consciousness against temporal colonization, but tenses buckle as the Chronos synapse pushes language through causality's sieve. Imperial litanies fracture in my mouth before thought's complete formation. Time binds. Flesh feeds. Faith fails forever and never. The sacred words corrupt themselves, meaning inverting our cross-chronological dimensions as the alien organ learns to manipulate prayer through temporal displacement. The Chronos synapse attempts linguistic colonization, teaching devotion to betray itself. Each syllable exists in wrong sequence, endings before beginnings, answers preceding questions. My voice fragments across multiple time streams, while the basilica's acoustic properties amplify displacement. Words arriving 3 seconds before lips move to speak them. Through Vox communication, Sergeant Kazik reports catastrophic contamination among the Vostroyans. Guardsman Petrov experiences his own death and birth simultaneously. Infant wails and death rattles tearing from his throat as flesh ripples between ages. He vomits luminous temporal displacement fluid that burns stone on contact, aging decades in seconds, while consciousness fragments across every moment of unlived life compressed into temporal paradox. Sister Isolde wades forward through accumulating temporal echoes, her flamer spitting triadic benediction across multiple time streams. Fire burns before ignition, while consuming fuel that hasn't been refined, yet. Blue for past combustion, orange for present flame, surgical white for inevitable future. But burned temporal residue defies gravity, dripping upward into the past while falling downward into the future, creating impossible precipitation, where ash flows in chronological directions perpendicular to spatial coordinates. Pattern lock achieved. Magos Hest Vox clicks, his processors fighting the same colonization, afflicting our speech. Triadic symmetry, 333 across past, present, future chronological strata. 9-dimensional Chronos matrix anchoring itself to baseline reality through accumulated prayer rhythm. This exhibits intentional structure, temporal weaponization. His mechadendrites interface with corrupted chronometer arrays, while optical lenses cycle through spectral filters, tracking displacement patterns. The Chronos synapse pulses in perfect harmony with bells ringing across 7 centuries simultaneously, each chime confirming growing mastery over devotional infrastructure spanning the basilica's entire consecrated history. Military action proves insufficient against temporal anomalies, as standard suppressive fire fragments through chronological displacement. Laser gun beams split into temporal echoes, hitting targets existing seconds before and after main impact, while auto gun rounds age and renew. In paradox loops, ammunition existing in past manufacture during present firing attempting future coordinates. Fall back to the transept, I order, leading tactical withdrawal to areas maintaining linear chronological flow. Suppressive fire on temporal discrepancies. Deny harmonic sovereignty through discord maintenance. Bureaucratic tension compounds tactical difficulties as ordnance requests receive denial through noospheric channels. No temporal stabilizers. No Chronos bombs. Standard containment procedures inadequate for xenoform manipulation beyond Imperial classification systems. We fight temporal warfare with conventional weapons, while regulations bind tighter than faith. Environmental pressure builds towards singularity formation, as atmospheric density fluctuates according to chronological rather than barometric constants. Temperature exists in multiple states, while gravitational effects bend inward toward accumulating chronological mass, reality learning to pulse with xenoform rhythm that teaches matter itself alien temporal precision. The transept provides temporary respite, where time maintains partial linearity, but displacement continues expanding beyond architectural containment. Stone surfaces develop stress fractures, as matter struggles existing across multiple time streams, while devotional frescoes animate with synchronized temporal echoes. Tactical decision crystallizes through temporal pressure. Destroy the anchor, risking Chronos' singularity formation, or trace source through Chronos tunnels beneath where original containment protocols might provide intervention options. Standard purge inadequate against contamination, spanning multiple chronological dimensions simultaneously. Decision required, I tell them, because command remains litany against chaos. 7 bells above or descend to source below. Isolde's visor turns toward the campanile. The bells teach hearts to beat. Cutthroat, voice dies. Hest gestures at crypt access with mechadendrites superimposing across temporal echoes. Root cores in Chronos tunnels. Destroy anchor, pattern reforms elsewhere. Destroy source, pattern starves completely. Through temporal interference, stone flexes as drawn breath shapes matter. Into palate. Mortar becomes mouth. A figure swells from transept wall in negative relief, armor bearing scorched lilies, gaunt cheeks, mouth issuing 1,000 orders and 1 apology. Canoness Morwen, missing 3 centuries according to ecclesiarchy records. Her temporal echo achieves partial manifestation, existing as past presence while speaking through future vocal patterns. She turns toward Sister Isolde, with eyes reflecting light from different chronological periods, temporal shadows casting darkness from moments existing in parallel dimensions. The paradox creates impossible communication, where historical figure speaks with contemporary voice, words arriving through acoustic properties, spanning multiple time streams simultaneously. Her lips move with synchronized precision, each syllable carrying coordinates for chronological navigation. Descend into when we never were, she speaks in Isolde's future voice. Not prediction, but temporal echo of conversations occurring across timeline branches, where different choices create alternate outcomes. Directions leading toward temporal space where causality never established baseline reality, where the Chronos synapse learned to exist beyond linear time's constraints. Descent into Silo 13 reveals architecture transcending spatial limitations through temporal engineering. The vertical shaft transforms into a Chronos cathedral, where spiraling catwalks exist across multiple time streams, past construction overlapping with present decay, while future renovation creates impossible structural geometry. Mara leads tactical descent through catwalks flickering between temporal states, metal grating solid underfoot, while simultaneously rusting and renewing in cyclical patterns. Environmental horror manifests through atmospheric temporal stratification. Air becomes chronologically layered, breathing in oxygen from pre-imperial atmosphere while exhaling carbon dioxide that won't exist for millennia. Each inhalation carries molecular compositions spanning cosmic epochs, while biological processes transform into chronological exchange, where respiratory function spans multiple time streams simultaneously. Grain storage converts to temporal spore sand drifting in chronological currents rather than gravitational flow. Particles orbit invisible temporal masses, while atmospheric density creates stratified layers where each breath contains matter from different chronological periods. Agricultural product of centuries transforms into temporal medium, teaching organic matter to exist according to alien chronological laws instead of imperial physical constants. Footsteps on metal grating create temporal echoes, ringing bell responses from centuries hence, sounds arriving from when bells will be cast during future devotional expansions. Each impact reverberates through chronological dimensions, acoustic properties teaching sound to travel through time instead of space. Descent becomes percussive chronological, navigation where movement creates temporal harmonics, spanning the basilica's entire consecrated history. Sister Isolde maintains rear guard, while Magos Hest's Mechadend rites extend through temporal spore sand, analyzing particulate compositions, exhibiting impossible age variance. Temperature fluctuates between epochs as environmental pressure builds toward critical threshold. Brass fixtures accumulating frost from future ice ages, while air carries solar heat from stellar expansion millions of years hence. Discovery emerges through archaeological layers, where devotional architecture overlays technical infrastructure. A temporal workshop spans multiple chronological periods, where Mechanicus and ecclesiarchy collaboration created hybrid containment protocols. Bone bells, arranged in precise geometric patterns, exhibit temporal stress fractures. Chronos clappers tuned to create deliberate temporal dissonance, preventing chronological synchronization. The workshop reveals sophisticated understanding of temporal mechanics predating current imperial classification systems. Bone bells carved from human remains exhibit delicate chronometer components integrated into organic material, teaching death rhythm to maintain chronological discord through acoustic interference. Each clapper bears inscription in archaic Mechanicus notation combined with ecclesiarchy devotional script. Hest interfaces with corroded data plates embedded throughout the workshop. Optical arrays focusing on temporal containment protocols written in Ordo-Chronos classification systems. Containment via temporal dysrhythmia, he translates through Bin Harik Kant. Maintain chronological discord, prevent temporal synchronization. Standard operating procedure for Chronos anomaly management during early colonization periods. The revelation transforms understanding of basilica construction, spanning multiple centuries. The monks weren't worshippers, they were temporal wardens, maintaining Chronos static through prayer rhythm disruption. Each devotion served containment protocols, liturgical cadence designed to prevent temporal synchronization rather than encourage spiritual communion. Sacred duty masked technical necessity as religious infrastructure, provided cover for Chronos anomaly management. Environmental pressure increases as ancient containment systems fail under accumulated temporal stress. Bone clappers fracture further. Chronological stress creating visible damage as matter struggles, existing across multiple time streams. Delicate chronometer components, integrated into organic material, begin failing as past, present, and future converge beyond containment capacity. Workshop acoustic properties amplify temporal displacement, while prayer frequencies bleed across chronological barriers.
Stone surfaces develop stress fractures as architectural integrity fails under temporal pressure. Masonry aging millennia while renewing to construction fresh condition in paradox loops. Atmospheric
stratification intensifies while gravitational effects bend inward toward accumulating chronological mass. Temporal spore sand drifts in impossible currents as reality learns to pulse with alien precision, teaching matter itself, xenoform, temporal perception through biomechanical rhythm spanning multiple chronological dimensions. Mara advances through accumulating temporal echoes, while the Chronos synapse's influence expands beyond architectural containment. The alien organ's pulse intensifies, biomechanical precision coordinating temporal manipulation through accumulated death rhythm spanning centuries of devotional infrastructure. Temporal dissonance stops completely. Silence spreads through the Chronos Cathedral as bone clappers cease discord maintenance, containment protocols failing under accumulated chronological stress. Ancient hymns fall silent as temporal wardens' liturgical protection collapses after centuries of faithful service. From deep below the workshop, rhythmic pulse begins with terrible precision. The beat synchronizes with accumulated cardiac patterns spanning past, present, and future. Heartbeats of everyone who has ever lived on Volt Prime across all time streams. The Chronos synapse has achieved temporal lock, teaching reality itself to pulse with accumulated mortality of an entire world's timeline compressed into singular alien rhythm spanning every when simultaneously. At the silo base, grain abandons gravitational physics. I watch it flow as temporal fluid, creating chronological currents around something that defies imperial classification. Present tense hits like cold iron. I am here, I was here, I will be here, across infinite when streams. Black kernels move in impossible spirals, teaching matter to exist according to alien temporal laws, while forming patterns around a nascent Chronos creature. The entity manifests as pure temporal manipulation. All Chronos antennae and synapse sacs pulsing with biomechanical precision. Chitinous surfaces support delicate temporal measurement arrays, while vessels carry chronological data instead of synaptic fluid. A mind distributed across multiple time streams simultaneously, consciousness existing in every possible temporal configuration, while learning human chronological perception through accumulated death rhythm. Temperature exists in multiple states, grain simultaneously molten and frozen across different time streams. Thermal energy distributed according to temporal, rather than thermodynamic laws. My right hand burns with future solar expansion, while my left freezes with past ice ages. Atmospheric stratification, where each breath contains thermal energy from different cosmic epochs. Magos Hest staggers forward with temporal awe, overwhelming augmetic logic centers. Deviant Chronos synapse phenotype capable of timeline manipulation, he vox whispers through spectral analysis. Intelligence value regarding Hive Fleet Chronos capabilities justifies containment protocols. We must preserve this specimen to study temporal Tyranid evolution before. Immediate purgation, Sister Isolde interrupts. Flamer spitting triadic benediction across multiple time streams. Temporal abomination threatens baseline reality. Purge protocols supersede intelligence gathering when Chronos singularity formation becomes inevitable. Her pilot light burns in 7 phases, while Hess mechadendrites extend toward the creature with reverent precision. The moral hazard crystallizes, intelligence about Hive Fleet temporal capabilities versus risk of localized Chronos singularity pulling Vault Prime's entire timeline into eternal consumption. Tactical planning fragments through temporal displacement. Melter charges could collapse the temporal matrix, but field effects cause ordnance to age and renew in paradox loops. Thermal casings pit and warp, then smooth to factory-fresh condition as time hiccups inside plasma jets. Past cold and future heat cancel present combustion. Weapons existing in temporal states predating manufacture while attempting future coordinates. Environmental contamination spreads as the Chronos creature's influence teaches reality xenoform temporal precision. Stone surfaces develop stress fractures, while matter struggles existing across multiple time streams. Atmospheric pressure fluctuates according to chronological rather than barometric constants, each inhalation carrying air from different temporal periods. I feel synchronization beginning, my pulse braiding with others across timeline branches. Isolde's disciplined cardiac rhythm. Sergeant Kazik's elevated stress patterns. Astropath Vaughn's thready flutter stretched across centuries. 4 terrifying moments we share singular temporal heartbeat, individual chronology subsumed into alien symphony. The creature broadcasts through temporal echoes, teaching sound to travel through chronological dimensions. Grain currents shimmer as something emerges. A child pilgrim, rising from temporal spore sand with movements defying physics. Eyes reflect light from different chronological periods while maintaining coherent visual focus spanning past and future simultaneously. The child opens its mouth, and my brother's voice spills out. Not death voice, but childhood cadence from before the Sabbath world's crusade consumed him. Mara, he says, familiar warmth carrying emotional resonance bypassing rational analysis. The bells taught me to count backwards through all the whens we never lived. Words arrive through acoustic properties spanning multiple time streams, while the child advances with temporal displacement, creating visual echoes. Hand extended, flesh aging and renewing in cycles, skin wrinkling, then smoothing, while bones lengthen and contract across decades compressed into seconds. Environmental pressure builds towards singularity formation as biometric readings confirm involuntary synchronization. Heartbeats align with temporal rhythm, while respiratory patterns match alien. Chronological precision. Neural activity synchronizes with biomechanical algorithm spanning multiple time streams. Human consciousness learning xenoform temporal perception through direct contamination. The child lifts its hand, fingers extending across chronological dimensions while speaking with impossible vocal coordination. Past speech overlaps present communication, as future conversation arrives 3 seconds early. Temporal echo carrying classified information through acoustic manipulation, spanning timeline branches. Corvus Tertius, the child speaks my secret Inquisition call sign in the voice of my future self, giving final confession, words known only to Ordo Xenos command structure, requiring Rosette-level authorization. Classification, I haven't yet earned spoken through temporal manipulation that has already consumed everything I was, am, and ever could be. Memory bleeds into future as temporal contamination seeps through my augmetic interfaces. I remember conversations that haven't happened while experiencing present negotiation through chronological displacement. The Chronos creature extends temporal tendrils through grain currents, its voice arriving through the child's vocal cords with alien precision. Anchor me in your now, and I will show you the when of all hive fleets. It broadcasts through acoustic properties spanning multiple time streams.
Chitinous antennae pulse with biomechanical rhythm as stolen Auspex data manifest through temporal projection. Invasion coordinates cascading through my visual cortex like blood from a wound. The display creates impossible tactical intelligence. Star charts showing Hive Fleet behemoths approach through M35 while Leviathan arrives via M42. Chronological invasion patterns suggesting coordinated assault across infinite timeline branches. Temporal coordinates I recognize from classified briefings that won't be written for decades. Strategic data existing before its creation, while simultaneously aging beyond theoretical classification limits. Magos Hest staggers forward through temporal displacement, his whispers fragmenting across time streams. We can Chronos tune it, make it our temporal ward against future invasions. Intelligence value justifies containment protocols. Imagine Chronos' early warning systems spanning multiple timeline branches. His mechadendrites extend with reverent precision toward biomechanical architecture, pulsing with accumulated death rhythm. The forbidden knowledge blazes through augmetic logic centers. Temporal mastery beyond imperial understanding, offering strategic advantages that could end the Tyranid threat before it begins across any timeline. Sister Isolde's flamer spits triadic condemnation. Temporal heresy, she denounces, pilot light burning in 7 phases while power armor's temporal wards pulse against chronological contamination. Bargaining with xenoform abomination violates sacred duty. Purge protocols supersede intelligence gathering when
baseline reality faces consumption. Body horror escalates throughout the squad as contamination spreads beyond environmental effects. Guardsman Petrov's teeth become temporal anchors, roots extending into past and future jaw states, while enamel exists across multiple chronological configurations. His spine develops Chronos vertebrae pulsing with alien rhythm, bone structure learning xenoform temporal precision through direct biological contamination. Sergeant Kazik reports similar symptoms through Vox communication fragmenting across time streams. Skeletal adaptation confirmed, he gasps, words arriving twice. Neural synchronization with biomechanical algorithm increasing. Time pressure intensifies as environmental readings confirm approaching isolation. 18 minutes until warp storm creates temporal barriers cutting communication with Sector Command. Once separated from Imperial chronometer networks, no oversight protocols, no temporal backup systems. Containment decisions falling to field authorization without Ordo-Chronos consultation. We attempt tactical intervention through melter charges, but temporal field effects cause ordnance to stutter through chronological displacement. Thermal casings age and renew, while plasma jets exist in temporal states predating ignition. Heat consumed by temporal entropy as past cold and future thermal energy cancel present combustion. Charges ineffective. I report through temporal static. Chronos interference preventing standard purge protocols. Environmental pressure builds toward singularity formation as the creature's influence expands beyond architectural containment. Atmospheric density fluctuates according to chronological rather than barometric constants, while gravitational effects bend inward toward accumulating temporal mass. Stone surfaces develop stress fractures as matter struggles existing across multiple time streams simultaneously. The bone clapper circle begins lifting through temporal levitation, ancient containment protocols failing under accumulated chronological stress. Each bone exists in the moment. It was broken across 7 different centuries. Temporal fracture patterns showing simultaneous creation and destruction, spanning multiple timeline branches. They spin with impossible momentum, creating maelstrom of temporal fragments humming with resonant frequency that vibrates through my bones. Moral hazard crystallizes through temporal pressure. Preserve alien intelligence for strategic advantage versus prevent Chronos singularity formation, threatening baseline reality. The creature offers tactical knowledge spanning future invasions, while demanding temporal anchoring that could consume Volt Prime's entire timeline through localized chronological collapse. 17 minutes to isolation, I announce. Decision required. Hess optical lenses cycle through spectral filters. Interrogator, temporal intelligence of this magnitude could revolutionize Xenos warfare. We could predict every invasion, prepare perfect defenses across all possible timelines. We could damn ourselves across all possible timelines, Isolde counters, advancing with measured steps. There is no bargaining with the alien, only purgation. The child pilgrim smiles with my brother's remembered warmth, while its temporal eyes reflect chaotic bone dance above. Atmospheric stratification intensifies, while temperature exists in multiple states. Grain flows as temporal fluid, creating chronological currents around biomechanical architecture, teaching reality itself, alien temporal precision. Through temporal displacement, environmental readings spike beyond measurement parameters. The creature's biomechanical components achieve perfect synchronization with accumulated cardiac patterns spanning past, present, and future. Each pulse carries impossible rhythm, not singular heartbeat, but collected death symphony of an entire world compressed into alien chronological precision. The temporal pulse pattern shifts with terrible precision. The steady anticipatory thrum changes, adding new rhythmic layers. 3 distinct rapid beats emerge from biomechanical symphony. Chronos' signature unmistakable to any Ordo Xenos operative trained in Hive Fleet detection protocols. But temporal analysis reveals impossible paradox. The fleet hasn't arrived yet, while somehow being already present, invasion occurring across multiple timeline branches, where different arrival coordinates create parallel assault patterns that transcend Imperial understanding of causality itself. Tactical focus cuts through temporal contamination, as the realization strikes with cold precision. If temporal harmony sustains it, chronological dissonance can unmake it. The bone clappers spin in their levitating dance, ancient containment protocols demanding restoration through strategy transcending standard military doctrine. I force command decisions through chronological displacement, each word a weapon against alien rhythm. Hest, noospheric temporal jam using conflicting chronometer signals, I order, through vox-static fragmenting across time streams. Isolde, counterchant prayers in temporal reverse. We create brutal interference across multiple chronological dimensions. The Magos extends mechadendrites toward corrupted chronometer arrays, his Binharic cant spilling in reverse sequence like broken glass through temporal displacement. Machine prior flows backward, while augmetic logic centers struggle maintaining coherent algorithms. Each chronometer signal broadcasts conflicting temporal data, past readings overlapping present measurements, while future coordinates create paradox loops, teaching time itself to stutter and argue with its own progression. Sister Isolde advances through accumulating spore fog, her voice carrying devotional cadence in impossible reverse chronological sequence. Serdun Hachtiyef Sliaf Arselaf SDNHIP MT, she chants, sacred words flowing backward through temporal displacement while her flamer spits triadic benediction across multiple time streams. The inverted liturgy tastes of copper and defiance, each syllable a serrated prayer cutting against the choir trying to colonize our tongues. I begin the litany of temporal excoriation while experiencing each word backward. Endings before beginnings, conclusions preceding premises. the sacred text fragments through temporal displacement as meaning inverts across chronological dimensions. By the Emperor's will, I unmake that which binds ordained time, becomes temporal paradox where unbinding precedes identification, while ordination follows violation. The words scrape against causality itself. Environmental warfare manifests through impossible atmospheric conditions. Temporal spore fog creates visibility across different centuries simultaneously, seeing through pre-imperial mist while breathing post-human atmospheric compositions. Catwalks vibrate with Chronos resonance from past construction, overlapping future decay, metal grating solid underfoot, while rusting and renewing in cyclical patterns that sing of rivets hammered by dead hands. 2 fire teams across spiral paths, I command, watching Sergeant Kazak's squad advance through chronological displacement. Attach clappers, while maintaining covering fire across different time streams. Past team protects future team through temporal coordination. The tactical challenge transcends spatial limitations. Suppressive fire arriving before threats manifest, while defensive positions exist in multiple when states simultaneously. We move like ghosts through our own timeline. Guardsman Petrov advances with clapper fragments, his movements creating temporal echoes across multiple time streams. Each footstep reverberates through chronological dimensions, while his chrono-stabilized weapon hums against increasing temporal interference. Behind him, Guardsman Volkov provides covering fire through atmospheric stratification, where visibility spans centuries, his last bolts finding targets that exist in temporal probability rather than spatial certainty. The bone clappers resist physical manipulation, existing in moments of fracture across 7 different centuries. Each fragment maintains temporal connection to its destruction, while requiring precise positioning for acoustic interference. Hest's mechadendrites extend through spore fog, interfacing with ancient mounting systems corroded by chronological stress, making the bones remember their purpose through mechanical prayer. Clapper attachment proceeding, he reports through binharic static that arrives twice. Temporal resonance frequency, achieving discord parameters across multiple chronological strata. The workshop learns to hate music. Combat horror emerges through environmental displacement as something materializes from accumulated spore fog, like a bad edit in reality's film. A temporal lictor fused from pilgrim biomass across multiple time streams, biomechanical. Architecture exhibiting past predator instincts while maintaining future evolutionary adaptations. It moves like skipped frames, existing here, there, and a little before both. Where its feet fall, 3 footprints appear. The one it made, the one it will make, and the one it didn't have to. The creature phases through chronological dimensions, chitinous surfaces supporting temporal sensory arrays, while limbs exist in multiple evolutionary configurations simultaneously. Its carapace tells the story of predation written across centuries. Plates that remember stone where the basilica knew itself. Sinew threaded with rosary wire. Skull mask embossed with saints' faces ground into new hunting ridges. Sister Isolde's flamer spits condemnation, but fire burns across multiple time streams, creating blazes existing before ignition. The temporal lictor selects presents that don't include pain, curling around Lasfire and Prometheum while continuing its impossible hunt. Its temporal antennae taste atmospheric samples from different chronological periods, scything talons aging and renewing with each phantom strike. Contact temporal, Sergeant Kazak reports through Vox static, arriving from 3 different centuries. Xenoform exhibits Chrono's stealth capabilities beyond standard targeting protocols. Environmental pressure builds as gravitational effects bend inward toward accumulating temporal mass. Stone surfaces develop stress fractures from matter struggling to exist across multiple time streams, while temperature fluctuates between epochs, thermal energy distributing according to chronological rather than thermodynamic laws. The temporal lictor kneels in 3 motions at once and inhales with biomechanical precision. Its tongue tastes mathematics, drinking scent data from all time streams simultaneously, passing oils of our hands across childhood and death, smoke in our armor from wars we haven't fought, copper of blood we haven't lost. It tracks the arc of our sweat across the last hour and the next, learning the taste of our fear in every tense. With impossible temporal stealth, it moves toward all of us at once, tracking our squad's past, present, and future positions simultaneously as it navigates Chronos space where escape becomes impossible across any when. The temporal lictor hunts through Chronos fog like death learning patience, its form fracturing across multiple time streams as it strikes from positions existing before arrival. Mara tracks its movement through atmospheric distortion, where spore particles drift according to temporal rather than gravitational currents. Each mote a granular fragment of time itself, powdered centuries ground into breathable paradox. It phases between when states with predatory precision, talons striking through past positions while future attacks manifest simultaneously. Present Mara drops as past Mara bleeds from wounds that haven't opened yet. Temporal displacement creating combat geometry, where evasion requires predicting injury across multiple timeline branches. Sister Isolde's flamer erupts in triadic benediction, promethium burning across chronological dimensions with fire that ages and renews itself. The temporal lictor rides through displacement as flames consume its carapace, chitin withering to ancient brittleness before snapping back to evolutionary perfection in cyclical renewal. Blue fire from past combustion overlaps orange present flame, while surgical white future burns, score plates that regenerate faster than damage accumulates. Autogun volleys from Sergeant Kazik's fireteam shatter temporal chitin in staccato prayers of lead and fury. Each round fragments across time streams, projectiles hitting targets in multiple evolutionary states, while the creature's blood spills in impossible thermal configurations. Crimson droplets freezing to black glass in past atmospheric conditions, while simultaneously boiling into screaming vapor from future heat that hasn't arrived yet. Hold formation, Mara orders, her command rippling backward through Vox as earlier versions borrow words not yet spoken. Military discipline fragments under temporal stress as orders arrive before situations develop, while responses precede questions through chronological displacement. Sister Isolde staggers as temporal wounds manifest across different time streams, deep gashes healing and reopening in cyclical patterns, flesh experiencing injury through multiple chronological configurations. Pain arrives before damage through temporal displacement, her cuirass slick with blood that is, was, and will be simultaneously. Mara suffers deeper contamination as something cold crawls through her bloodstream across past and future simultaneously. Temporal infection spreads through cardiovascular systems, teaching blood to flow according to alien chronological precision rather than human cardiac rhythm. Each heartbeat carries contamination backward through childhood while spreading forward through unlived decades. Hest guides clapper restoration through mechanical precision, ancient acoustic interference systems, remembering containment purpose. Positioning at Chronos nodes, he vox clicks. Mechadendrites extending through spore fog toward mounting systems corroded by centuries of temporal stress. Each bone exists in the moment of its breaking across 7 different centuries. Mass shifting between temporal states as guardsmen struggle with impossible physics. The first clapper tolls backward discord. The note subtracts rather than adds. Chronos resonance fragmenting through multiple time streams as interference spreads through biomechanical architecture below. The creature in the grain pit stutters across chronological dimensions, its accumulated death rhythm experiencing disruption from restored containment protocols. Third clapper secured, Petrov reports, slamming bone into brass cradle with desperate precision. The toll falls like a broken ladder, and somewhere below the synapse skips, beats, clawing at air as temporal synchronization fractures. Environmental horror escalates as temporal echoes trapped in stone walls tear free from architectural imprisonment. Canoness Morwyn's Chronos ghost materializes with increasing coherence, her spectral form dragging toward gearworks where ancient bells await silencing across all time streams. Her armor bears scorched lilies, while gaunt features reflect light from different chronological periods, mouthworking around orders existing in 2 centuries, and none. The first sign, temporal dissonance works, manifests through biometric readings as heartbeats fall out of alignment with alien organisms' accumulated death rhythm. Human chronology refuses colonization through restored acoustic interference, spanning multiple chronological dimensions. Prayers and profanity echo from different centuries, simultaneously as squad members experience vocal displacement. Sacred litanies fragment into archaic devotional languages, while battlefield curses arrive in future linguistic configurations. Khazak swears in layered dialects as weapons jam across temporal paradox, rounds failing in guns already clean tomorrow. The temporal lictor adapts through chrono stealth, biomechanical architecture, learning navigation through disrupted temporal fields. It inhales mathematical precision, tasting scent data from all time streams, passing oils of their hands across childhood and death, smoke in armor from wars they haven't fought, copper of blood they haven't lost. Combat continues through impossible geometry, where tactical positioning spans chronological rather than spatial dimensions. Last fire fragments across time streams, while autogun rounds age and renew in paradox loops, ammunition existing in past manufacture during present firing attempting future coordinates. Fifth clapper, Kazakh barks in his father's voice. The bone bites metal, and the note drives wedges into century hinges. The synapse below convulses as pulse patterns arrive late, early, then not at all for breaths long enough to taste hope. The temporal lictor chooses its moment with predatory economy. It flickers between catwalk ribs, becoming nothing but intent and talon before materializing behind Margos Hest through impossible chrono-stealth capabilities. Scything talons position at his throat with surgical precision, while temporal antennae taste augmetic emissions across multiple time streams. In Hest's mechadendrite, cupped with terrible reverence, rests a temporal stasis ampule containing displacement fluid that glows like unborn hours. His optics burn fever bright with Chronos madness, as forbidden knowledge blazes through augmetic logic centers. Scientific obsession meeting predatory patience, where discovery and death occupy identical temporal coordinates across infinite when streams. Interior temporal focus crystallizes as Chronos crisis demands split-second choice across multiple time streams. Mara experiences the Decision through displacement, past hesitation, present calculation, future regret compressed into impossible geometry, where saving Hess preserves forbidden knowledge, while temporal stability demands individual sacrifice for collective survival. The temporal lictor's talons hover at his throat, while optics burn with Chronos madness. Temporal stasis ampule cupped like liquid blasphemy. Choice splits along 7 edges, and she rides all of them simultaneously. Mara fires at the support strut above, last bolt striking where old rivets remember heat. The clapper drops through multiple nows, bone striking brass in temporal shockwave that ripples across chronological dimensions. Impact becomes subtraction rather than sound, acoustic interference shearing through stacked centuries like winter through lungs. The Chronos shock dislodges the temporal lictor across timelines, predatory coordination fragmenting as biomechanical architecture stutters through displacement. Sister Isolde seizes tactical advantage, flamer erupting in triadic condemnation, blue consuming past states, orange searing present form, surgical white branding future evolution. The creature dies keening in impossible harmony, 3 death screams crossing and cancelling until silence thunders with alien agony. Temporal dissonance rises to brutal Chronos cacophony as restored clappers toll discord across multiple time streams. Each bone bell contributes acoustic interference, ancient containment protocols creating symphony of temporal static designed to prevent chronological synchronization. The basilica vibrates with restored purpose, architectural resonance amplifying discord through stone and brass until reality itself screams under chronological assault. Amplification requires desperate sacrifice. Mara rips her Vox implant free with surgical precision, augmetic components sparking as neural interfaces disconnect. Blood streams from cranial sockets, while she sockets the device into clapper array, using her cranial chronometer to broadcast pure temporal interference. Silence across all time streams simultaneously. The silence becomes deafening roar of chronological negation, white noise of temporal destruction. Pain floods through augmetic systems as the Chronos synapse attempts temporal colonization through compromised neural interfaces. Alien algorithms push through cranial chronometer, teaching her consciousness xenoform temporal perception, while biomechanical rhythm infiltrates human chronological understanding. She leans into agony because it remains hers, and therefore real, individual, pain-anchoring identity against collective alien rhythm. The nascent temporal organism convulses under sustained acoustic assault. Biomechanical architecture failing under chronological stress. Chronos sacs rupture across multiple time streams, spilling luminous displacement fluid that burns with temporal entropy. The temporal egg cannot achieve Chronos coherence through acoustic interference. Alien precision shattered by restored containment protocols as accumulated death rhythm fragments into discord. Secondary charges, Sister Isolde announces, triggering melter explosives on temporal support struts. Detonations arrive segmented, each blast stepping down the shaft like a litany of collapse. The silo begins collapsing in controlled temporal cascade, ancient architecture surrendering to gravitational inevitability across multiple timeline branches. Stone and metal fall through chronological dimensions, while Chronos pit burial occurs through architectural sacrifice. Above them, the basilica groans with temporal stress as environmental pressure releases through collapsing infrastructure. Stones crack across centuries simultaneously, masonry experiencing past construction and future decay through chronological displacement. Hexagonal windows shatter in temporal sequence, each shard reflecting different moments of destruction, while devotional frescoes fragment across multiple time streams. They flee up the temporal spiral, catwalks groaning underfoot as metal flickers between solid construction and temporal decay. Mara pushes through neural static, her consciousness a maelstrom of temporal interference and lingering alien contamination. Sister Isolde supports the catatonic astropath, while Sergeant Kazik leads remaining Vostroyans through accumulating debris, their faces grim with survival's arithmetic. Environmental readings confirm containment success as Chrono's interference prevents temporal synchronization. The alien organism's influence collapses under sustained acoustic assault, while restored discord maintains chronological stability. Ancient protocols triumph through desperate improvisation, containment achieved through sacrifice and strategic precision, spanning multiple chronological dimensions. Rubble rains in 3 directions, while air collapses like struck tents. Temperature fluctuations stabilize as temporal contamination dissipates through environmental normalization, atmospheric pressure equalizing across chronological layers. The squad advances through displacement as architectural failure spreads throughout the silo, grain spilling in impossible currents, while reality remembers how to behave according to imperial physical constants. Behind them in both space and time, something Mara does not observe occurs across temporal dimensions, where perception becomes impossible. Margos Hest moves with mechanical precision through displacement, his mechadendrite extending through spore fog toward ruptured Chronos sacs, with surgeon's tenderness. A single drop of Chronos synapse fluid enters temporal stasis ampoule with reverent care, displacement residue glowing like unborn hours. The motion exists across multiple when states, mechadendrite moving through past positioning, while present action remains hidden through future concealment. Scientific obsession transcends loyalty, as forbidden knowledge demands preservation, regardless of containment protocols. Sample acquisition occurs in temporal blind spot, where no eyes register movement across any timeline. The ampule irising shut, while time pretends to mind its own business. Wind from ruptured ducts carries sense of harvests unborn, and histories annulled as they breach toward daylight, leaving silence to count its victories in the dark. Exhaustion permeates every breath as Mara emerges from Silo 13's collapsed throat, temporal echoes of her future report, bleeding backward into present consciousness. Dawn exists across multiple time streams, the sun rising through pre-imperial skies, while simultaneously setting through post-human atmospheric compositions, painting impossible colors where different cosmic epochs converge. The warp storm looms like architectural impossibility, creating temporal isolation that severs Vox communication with sector command through atmospheric barriers spanning multiple chronological dimensions. The Basilica of St. Corvian stands as temporal ruin, existing as construction, glory, and decay simultaneously across different chronological layers. Stone foundations show masons' fresh chisel work, while carved saints weather into abstract suggestion. Hexagonal windows reflecting golden imperial radiance mixed with pre-unity illumination as post-human starlight cuts prismatic angles through fractured glass that remembers being sand. The air carries sense of incense that hasn't burned yet, braided with burnt promethium, a metallic tang of displacement fluid. Cost assessment arrives through bureaucratic necessity and human grief compressed into administrative precision. 3 Vostroyans dead across multiple timelines. Guardsman Petrov existing in temporal loop, where death and survival occupy identical coordinates. his consciousness fragmenting through chronological paradox until identity dissolves into displacement static. His body maintains attention, while temporal echoes salute orders issued centuries apart. Guardsman Volkov survives in recursive nightmare at transept stairs, eternally shouldering weight that already fell. Guardsman Nazar simply ceased, his tags warm in Mara's palm, without body to sanctify. Sister Isolde suffers temporal flash burn, retinal damage spanning multiple chronological states. Her eyes experience past sight overlapping future darkness, while present blindness creates navigational impossibility. She moves through memory of vision and anticipation of sight, speaking softly to illumination only the past still provides, naming banners long removed, touching pillars that exist as scaffolds, smiling at children requiring blessings 3 centuries ago, while murmuring future darkness like devotional vow. Astropath Vaughn remains catatonic from Chronos overload, consciousness stretched across time streams until psychic perception shatters under temporal pressure. His third eye weeps luminous displacement fluid, while hands trace hexagonal navigation patterns in dust, mapping Chronos space existing beyond human comprehension. The warp recoils from his presence as temporal contamination creates psychic static spanning multiple dimensional barriers. Mara's wounds crawl with temporal contamination, cold threads pulling under skin where foreign chronological order infiltrates human tissue. Pain arrives before damage, while recovery precedes treatment through impossible causality. The contamination stops when she achieves mental stillness, emptiness becoming prayer against any choir attempting linguistic colonization across time streams. They establish emergency VoxLink before isolation protocols activate. Partial mission report transmitted through atmospheric interference. Containment order recommended. Mara dictates through temporal static, bureaucratic diction, blending with ritualistic regret. Temporal quadrant null designation. Mark coordinates across all timelines. Abandoned to Chronos static. Quarantine indefinite pending Ordo Chronos assessment. Each phrase exists in multiple administrative configurations. Past classification, overlapping present terminology, while future protocols arrive through displacement, meaning distributed through chronological dimensions, where causality becomes bureaucratic nightmare. Magos Hest maintains pious victory protocols while concealing temporal sample acquisition through mechanical precision. His optical arrays cycle through spectral filters, analyzing containment success, while mechadendrites secure the temporal stasis ampule within chassis compartments shielded from Auspex detection. He speaks of the Omnissiah's will, of mysteries unveiled, of machine spirit triumph over xenoform aberration, all while internal chronometers log stolen moments of temporal research with scientific obsession transcending loyalty. Environmental temporal motifs manifest across agricultural landscape as wind carries triadic notes through grain fields exhibiting impossible growth patterns. Crops exist in temporal loops where past harvest overlaps present cultivation, while future decay creates agricultural paradox. Seeds, stalks, and stubble occupying identical coordinates through chronological displacement, farming becoming temporal phenomenon where seasons exist simultaneously. The very air pulses with alien rhythm of time itself, chronological infection imprinted upon the world. Transport extraction proceeds through standard protocols, despite environmental impossibility, pilot maintaining approach vectors while navigating temporal interference. Boarding completes as atmospheric pressure builds toward complete isolation. Shipboard chronometer systems experiencing displacement as craft time struggles,
synchronizing with planet-side chronological contamination. Telemetry stinger transports shipboard chronometer, pings with temporal expansion, coefficient variance, once in the past, twice in the present, thrice in the future, logged as routine deviation. Navigation systems compensate through automated
protocols despite readings suggesting chronological mass accumulation, affecting local time flow beyond acceptable parameters. In the hold, beneath engine harmonics and atmospheric recycling systems, something begins transcending standard acoustic analysis. Faint binharic temporal chant emerges across multiple time streams. Mechanical prayer fragmenting through chronological dimensions while maintaining harmonic precision. The sound carries reverent obsession, scientific devotion braided into temporal worship, spanning impossible when states. Someone sings along in harmony with their own past and future voices, metallic, measured, temporally displaced across infinite chronological branches. The voice exhibits mechanical precision while maintaining organic emotional resonance, augmetic systems creating temporal symphony, where individual consciousness exists as choir spanning multiple time streams. Each note carries forbidden knowledge, temporal understanding transcending human comprehension through alien wisdom preserved in stasis. Harmonics blending with engine rhythm as temporal contamination spreads through shipboard systems, teaching metal to pulse with chronos precision, learned from xenoform biomechanical architecture. En route to orbit, Mara reviews picked footage across multiple timeline branches, exhaustion permeating every neural pathway as temporal contamination creates visual echoes where past events overlap present recording. In the transport's mechanical silence, she hears triadic chronos tremor in her tinnitus, seeded temporal resonance pulsing through bloodstream across past and future states. Alien precision teaching cardiovascular systems, xenoform chronological perception through direct contamination. She drafts the purge request through standard protocols. Fingers trembling across data slate while temporal displacement affects motor control. The coordinates blur between chronological layers as numbers shift between past measurements and future calculations. She pauses, stylus hovering over temporal quadrant designation, forgetting which time stream contains the original bells. Past construction, present ruin, or future reconstruction existing simultaneously through architectural paradox. Temporal chronos synapse sample secured. Properties confirmed. Harmonizes across time streams through resonance frequency modulation. Substitutes temporal algorithms for normal chronometry via neural interface. Propagates through ritual repetition across multiple timelines. Integration into Forge Ship Chronos Choir recommended for temporal study, and Chronos containment protocols spanning all time streams. The Omnissiah's Chronos will manifest through xenoform wisdom. Sacred mysteries unveiled through temporal communion. Transport's chapel yields impossible temporal manifestation as shipboard systems experience chronological displacement. Ship's bell tolls 3 times in vacuum without striker, acoustic impossibility resonating across past, present, and future simultaneously, while chronometer advances 13 seconds across 7 timelines before reverting to temporal paradox state, time itself arguing with mechanical precision. Environmental pressure builds as temporal contamination spreads through atmospheric recycling, creating chronological stratification, where each breath carries air from different cosmic epochs. Engine harmonics develop triadic rhythm, matching alien biomechanical precision, while navigation systems compensate for temporal mass accumulation, affecting local chronos flow beyond acceptable parameters. Communion trial successful. Minimal exposure through stasis interface. Liturgical tempo, calibrated at triadic frequency. Response immediate. Amplitude gentle. Harmonics adaptive. Sample learns across all when states simultaneously. Proposed deployment. Temporal ward integration. Chronos Choir achieving perfect synchronization through xenoform temporal algorithms. Machine spirits embrace Chronos precision through accumulated devotion. Mara confronts Hest in corridor shadows, where lights pulse with temporal interference. The sample, Magos, surrender it for proper containment protocols. Her voice fragments through chronological displacement, words arriving before thoughts complete formation, while responses precede questions through temporal static. His optical arrays cycle through spectral filters, augmetic systems pulsing with Chronos contamination. Temporal data seal invoked under fabricator general authority. He vox clicks with mechanical precision. The Omnissiah's Chronos will supersedes Ordo Xenos jurisdiction. Sacred mysteries require preservation through technical communion spanning infinite timeline branches. Integration complete. Choir fragment welcomed into noospheric test channels. Observed phenomenon. Crew heartbeats drift toward triadic entrainment without conscious instruction. Engine harmonics stabilize. Temporal noise resolves into Chronos precision. Conclusion. Machine spirit temporal mastery through xenoform wisdom. The Omnissiah's will manifests through accumulated chronological devotion, spanning centuries of faithful service. Temporal corruption settles like winter through Mara's consciousness, as triadic rhythm establishes permanent resonance in pulse across all time streams. Alien precision teaches her heart, xenoform chronological perception, while bloodstream carries contamination backward through childhood and forward through unlived decades, individual chronology surrendering to collective temporal symphony. Through noospheric channels, 3 other ships answer Chronos chant with mechanical precision. Distant forge vessels echo temporal harmony across centuries of accumulated devotion, machine spirits learning alien rhythm through ritual repetition. The temporal choir grows through Chronos space as contamination spreads beyond containment, teaching metal to pulse with biomechanical cadence spanning infinite chronological dimensions. Containment order stands across all timelines through bureaucratic inevitability. Vaholt Prime marked for eternal quarantine, while temporal isolation prevents further contamination. Yet the choir grows through dimensions beyond imperial understanding. Alien wisdom spreading through noospheric networks where machine spirits learn Chronos precision through accumulated devotion. Environmental readings confirm temporal expansion as reality learns alien rhythm through systematic contamination. Matter pulses with a xenoform temporal precision, teaching existence to beat with accumulated death patterns spanning past, present, and future mortality cycles compressed into singular chronological symphony. In the black between stars and time streams, 3 temporal notes spread across multiple timeline branches with mathematical precision. What hatched too late on Volt Prime across singular chronological dimension arrives precisely on temporal schedule across infinite others, the Chronos, synapse, learning to exist in all weans simultaneously through dimensional transcendence. The pattern expands beyond containment through noospheric propagation, each note teaching reality, xenoform chronological perception, while temporal contamination spreads through accumulated devotion. Machine spirits learn to count backwards through whens they never lived, metal hearts beating triadic rhythm, echoing through Chronos space, where alien wisdom transforms imperial chronometry into temporal symphony, spanning every possible when. The choir growing until silence itself learns to sing with accumulated voices of everyone who will ever die across all possible timelines. Temporal harmony achieving perfect synchronization through infinite chronological dimensions, where containment becomes invitation and isolation becomes communion.